You've probably heard of PBIS, maybe even have been involved with a school that does something like PBIS. But very often, what schools do under the general heading of PBIS is incomplete, misguided, or far too complicated. The purpose of this module is to provide the simplest possible definition of what it means for a school to be doing PBIS. Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, or PBIS, is not a curriculum. There are no specific activities, rather it is a framework for selecting, implementing, and evaluating effective support systems for student behavior for all students in the school. PBIS is generally associated with a triangle, and this is just a way to present a simple idea of the logic behind PBIS. Here's a logical analogy of the triangle and its application in schools.
Take that triangle and break it up. People see this triangle and think PBIS or RTI, MTSS, but they see it as three colors of one triangle, and it's not. It's three triangles. So think of it like this. Here are the kids in your school. They're having problems. Let's make up a problem. They're rusting. They're getting rusty. Your school is damp. Here's what I'm going to suggest you do. Go out and assess your school and find the dampest areas. Go to those damp areas and paint them with a coating of green rust-proof paint. Second, line up all your kids in the hallway and paint them with green rust-proof paint. Now, here's what you're going to need to do. I'm warning you, that rust-proof paint doesn't work for every kid. So I want you to spend the year scratching at kids. As you walk down the hall, chip away and flake away and chip. And if you see a kid whose green paint is chipping away, here's what you should say to yourself. That kid is a non-responder. That kid is not responding to all the good stuff we've given to make everything work for them. Their snowball has started to turn in the wrong direction. What do we need to do? Here's what I'm going to suggest. Yellow paint. We're going to take the yellow and we're going to give those kids a coating of yellow super rust-proof paint. Now, if you're smart, you're thinking right now, well, if yellow paint is so great, why don't we just apply that instead of green? Here's why. One, yellow paint is expensive. It's taking more people to do it, it's taking more time to do it, and it's more complicated. It's intense. Its intensity is what we're talking about as we go up that triangle. Second reason, yellow paint only works when applied on top of a base of green. Good instruction across the school. So we apply our yellow. Go around your school and chip away at your yellow painted kids. Believe it or not, there are some kids that are incredibly prone to rust, and they'll flake right through 2 coats of paint. When you find them, they're going to need a 3rd layer of paint. So again, realize this isn't red paint instead of, it's red paint on top of. When we talk about Tier 3 and MTSS, it isn't something else, it's something in addition. It's expensive. So again, why not just apply red instead of yellow? One, red is very expensive because it needs to be applied one-on-one. Super individualized. You go to Lowe's to buy red paint and they're going to ask for a prescription. It's based on one kid. What's your plan for that kid? The only thing we've got to keep us from needing to apply lots of yellow is a great coating of green. The best thing we have to keep us from needing red, which is expensive, is a great coating of green and a great coating of yellow. But again, realize it's layered on top, one after the other.
PBIS is really just 4 simple things: prediction, prevention, consistency, and evaluation. We predict where our students will fail, we develop supports to prevent these failures, we work together to make sure we implement consistently as a school, and we look at data to evaluate where it's working and where will we need to provide more intensive and individualized support. When looking at these 4 simple components, in reality, PBIS is simply a system of providing effective instruction in the behavioral realm. In fact, the same logic is used in the academic realm, but it's typically called response to intervention, or RTI. Schools that do both are often said to be implementing multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. In the following modules, you'll get a better idea of each of these 4 components and how they are most simply implemented. As we end this module, this would be a good time to have a simple discussion with your coworkers. Do you work in a school that is implementing PBIS or MTSS? And if so, do you believe that all of the 4 components are in place in your school and can give you examples of each?
Sometimes, PBIS is implemented along with similar academic processes known as response to intervention, or RTI. And when PBIS and RTI are implemented together, it's often referred to as multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. In Kentucky, it's also sometimes referred to as ABRI or ABRI, which is just Academic and Behavior Response to Intervention. As a school-wide intervention, PBIS is not run by the administrator, it is run by the entire school. However, in order to make this practical, a PBIS team is created within the school. The PBIS team does not run PBIS, it acts as a representative body in the school to facilitate communication and action in a simple but comprehensive manner. Ideally, the PBIS team includes persons that represent all the stakeholder groups in the school. One way to think about this is to consider whether every adult in the school can look at the team and point to a person that represents him or her. This representation is crucial in terms of getting buy-in and consistent implementation. PBIS teams typically meet monthly to look at data and evaluate where changes are necessary. Module 6 in this series describes the process of data collection, but here we're looking at the uses of this data in 3 key ways at each meeting. The first is to evaluate progress towards school goals. For example, a school may have developed a general goal of reducing suspensions or a more specific goal of reducing discipline referrals from the cafeteria. In either case, the team looks at the data available to evaluate progress. If progress is adequate, the success is reported back to the full faculty and staff to reinforce continued use of those prevention strategies and keep them in place. The second key is to look generally at discipline data in an attempt to see any new trends. Sometimes in the middle of the year, a new hotspot or new problem behavior or new problem condition pops up. By looking at the data each month, the team can get out ahead of these problems and confer back with the faculty and staff with regard to simple prevention solutions. Finally, the team should look for students whose behaviors indicate that prevention efforts are not working. That is, they look to identify students in need of further support. For example, the team may designate a criterion for number of discipline reports necessary to prompt further assessment. As a general rule of thumb, the criterion for such identification should identify 15 to 20% of the school's population. Not all of these students will require attention at an elevated tier, but all deserve a closer look to better understand the predictability of their behavior. Because we don't want to clog up regular faculty meetings with long discussions of PBIS, the team will designate a person to present general findings to the entire faculty at regular meetings. In addition, data should be printed and posted in an area where all faculty and staff have regular access. Note that the PBIS team is not permanent. People may rotate on and off each year as part of a regular committee schedule. In this way, all faculty and staff take part in the teaming process at some point. The idea is to make the PBIS process a routine part of how the school does business. Other modules in this series describe specific components of the process. Before moving to the next module, consider the following. Do the faculty and staff in your school truly understand the logic of PBIS? Remember that you are probably already doing much of what is involved. PBIS is just a framework for creating systemic consistency and efficiency. In terms of teaming, consider who needs to be included in order to make sure that you are representing everyone and determine a monthly meeting time.
A major component of the PBIS logic is that what can be predicted can be prevented. As such, PBIS is a framework for creating environments that set students up to be successful. The more you know about predictable problems, the better you can create plans that fit your unique students and conditions. Knowing when, where, and why student problems occur is probably the most important information we have when it comes to facilitating student success.
Some of you all may have been introduced to this and know what it is. And then you see the maps around the perimeter, and I'm going to explain what those maps are. This is called the hotspots activity. What you see are a map of the second floor, a map of the first floor, and the third floor is over there. Think about the problem behaviors that we see and observe frequently. Take 2 sticky circles, write the 2 most frequent observable problem behaviors on the sticky circles, and write the times of the day for each circle. Then after you write those down, you're going to take and put those circles on the map where it goes. So if you think it's at the cafeteria, you're going to the first floor, find the first floor, put it by the cafeteria. If you think it's by the library or by the elevator, things like that, you're going to place those circles where they go. And then after that, we're going to discuss as a staff when they're happening, who's involved, what's going on, what are these observable behaviors, and why do you think they're going on? We're going to have a discussion about this and hopefully come up with a plan moving forward on how we're going to fix these problems. All righty, you may begin. We can't change the way our students are because they're going to be who they are, but we can change what we are. And when we're inconsistent with, and I notice I keep saying we, because sometimes I am in that not box of that social discipline window where I am I've had it. But I always have to make sure that I'm in the with box. And sometimes we get lax. And this time of the year, we're tired and we get lax. But we have to rev it up, energize each other, and go back to the way we were at the beginning in August so we can end our year out safely. Because this was a great activity, and we don't have to start this next year, but it's really going to help us when we're planning out next year also with people.
The outcome of this process is a collaborative school agreement regarding their unique predictors of student failure with behavior. Note that this includes who, what, when, and why by location. This is the information the school needs to move forward in the simplest possible manner. For example, knowing only that problems happen in the hallway is not particularly helpful in that the response must be in the hallways for all students all day and with no specific focus. On the other hand, knowing that the hallway problems are most likely during afternoon transitions in the East Wing and among 8th grade students who run and push, the school can create a much more precise intervention, saving time and effort while increasing the likelihood of success. While this type of mapping activity is a great way to get started and a great way to begin school-wide collaboration on PBIS, data collected as part of PBIS will take the place of this exercise. In the future, the team will simply begin the year with a review of actual discipline data, something that will be further discussed in Module 6 of this series. However, the purpose is the same. The school will use the information to predict problems so that intervention can be as responsive and yet simple as possible. Before moving to the next module, consider the degree to which your faculty and staff are in general agreement about the locations, times, and problems that are the most predictive of student misbehavior. Consider how you might engage in a mapping activity or even a simple discussion of predictors to get everyone on the same page about prevention strategies.
It's said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In PBIS, prevention is perhaps the founding principle. This module is focused on some simple steps that schools can take to prevent problem behavior. There are 3 proven strategies for improving students' successful behavior, starting with effective instruction. Nothing we know of has a larger effect on behavior change than teachers teaching students. Effective instruction involves telling them exactly what is expected, modeling it for them, and providing them with multiple opportunities to be engaged, just as we would when teaching academics. Because there are typically many expected student behaviors to teach, it's helpful for schools to come up with 3 to 5 big ideas or concepts to anchor all of the smaller rules that they will be teaching across locations in the school. For example, schools may use terms like respect and responsibility as anchors, teaching the meaning of each. Then, every school expectation simply becomes an example of these overarching concepts. As a process, these concepts are first taught school-wide, then teachers use these as foundations for teaching expectations by location, time, or activity. Now, all instruction is anchored to larger concepts with which students have familiarity. In this manner, students understand why the rules are in place and don't see them as random or arbitrary adult decisions. While instruction involves what we teach students to do, the environment involves those things we can do to control or make it more likely that students will be successful with what we've taught. In PBIS, the school thinks about maintaining consistency in how rules are encouraged and enforced, the manner in which reminders are provided, the placement of adults during times and in locations that are predictive of problems, and even the arrangement of furniture. This is all done with the thought of maximizing the probability of student success. The final proven strategy takes us to the concepts of school climate and culture. We know that when students believe that adults are genuinely working on their behalf to promote success, they are more likely to be compliant. Much of what we do in terms of setting students up to be successful helps in this effort to build relationships. But truly positive teacher-student relationships require effort on the part of the adult to make it happen. Effective PBIS schools bring together their entire faculty and staff to discuss the use of these 3 proven strategies. Focusing first on the main predictors of student failure, they agree upon the expected behaviors that will be taught, how they will be tied to the school's anchors, and how those behaviors will be taught across the entire school. Then, all consider what they could do within the environment to maximize student success with these expectations. Importantly, the focus is on maximizing probability across the entire school, considering what extra strategies might be necessary for more challenging students. Look at this example from a high school. If a school were to identify problems in the hallway that included running, pushing, cursing, and congregating to clog traffic, they may logically determine to teach 4 expectations, each deemed important to solve the identified problems. But note also that having expectations is not enough. The school would also need to consider a set of environmental arrangements or adult agreements to increase the probability of student success. As a general rule, schools should consider that for every location, there should be at least as many adult strategies for success as there are student expectations. As you've already seen, PBIS schools make use of posters in all areas of the school. While there are important reasons for having posters, it's important to realize that the poster itself is not instruction and does not mean that a school is doing PBIS. Simply having a poster without instruction is unlikely to have an effect on student behavior. We don't teach every word in the dictionary. We don't teach every math problem you could possibly run into. We teach rules that allow you to solve lots of things. How do we do that in behavior? And the way we do that in behavior is to anchor things. So that's why we've asked schools to come up with these motto things. Be respectful, be responsible, be safe, respect yourself, others' property. The purpose of that is singular. It's to create anchors for all those little behaviors. Posters should function as reminders of what students have been taught and placed in areas where those reminders will be most effective. As a big idea for prevention, the responsibility is on the adults. Students will make errors, that's part of learning. And so our goal is not to eliminate errors, our goal is to reduce errors as much as possible under conditions where we have that control. Before moving to the next module, take some time to think about the following with your coworkers. Does your school teach a set of common big ideas for behavior to anchor your smaller rules? Do you have adult agreements about how to facilitate student success with the specific behavioral expectations you teach? Ask someone unfamiliar with PBIS what it's all about, and you'll probably hear something about the use of positive reinforcement, followed by examples of a variety of points, awards, tickets, and prizes that students earn in PBIS schools. Whenever I say positive behavior support, they think, oh, we've got to start handing out candy and goodies. No, you don't. That was never a part of PBIS. That could be something you choose to do, but that is not an inherent piece. All that was ever inherent in this in the very beginning was, can you up the level of verbal feedback that kids get? Yes, thank you, good, right. While it's true that PBIS involves positive acknowledgement of student success, there is no requirement that schools provide any tangible points or prizes. The real key is that adults focus on increasing the amount of positive feedback that students receive. If students aren't able to earn such positive feedback, then instruction is not successful and must change. Of course, simplest feedback is just basic private acknowledgement. Anytime we use words to indicate to a student that he or she has been successful, we are using verbal praise. And if we use a gesture such as a thumbs up or a smile, it can have the same effect. The key is that the student knows what the words or gestures indicate. There's nothing novel about verbal praise, but we have decades of data showing that adults use it with students at rates that are extremely low. Thanks, that's great, correct, and even yes are all examples. But to increase the effectiveness, it is recommended that feedback also be as specific as possible, ensuring that the student knows exactly what behavior warranted the praise. So instead of good, we might say, you got every single thing put away on time, good for you. But sometimes students need more than just verbal praise. Students with a history of failure or who have little confidence may require increased levels of reinforcement. In addition, students with high rates of success sometimes deserve an additional acknowledgement. For these students, public acknowledgement may be an effective second layer of positive feedback. As part of PBIS, schools often develop a range of public acknowledgements, including certificates, the posting of pictures on the wall, signing a wall of fame, and even announcing exemplary behavior over the morning announcements. While not every student would like being called out publicly, most everyone likes some form of larger acknowledgement, even if it's simply a note home. Again, while there is nothing inherent in PBIS that requires the use of tokens or tickets, many PBIS schools do so. Sometimes the use of tokens or tickets is the most effective way of getting adults to remember to provide that feedback. While I may forget to say thanks to students for walking in the hall, keeping a fistful of tokens may act as a good reminder. But make no mistake, for the average student, simply increasing the amount of verbal feedback they receive for success will be just as effective as more tangible awards. It's just not something that we adults do very well in schools. If schools do use a ticket or token system, here are some recommendations for keeping it as successful and simple as possible. First, target your token acknowledgement to specific student behaviors. Use your school data to identify times and locations where misbehavior is particularly predictive and reteach the expectations. Then, let students know that tokens will be available for examples of these behaviors. This specificity allows for the systems to have larger impact where needed most. Second, keep it simple. Rewards associated with tickets or tokens should be curricular-based. Things like computer lab time, free reading time, a homework pass, or the ability to bring coffee into the cafeteria. These generally do not require extra adult effort or expenditure. Third, using a lottery system allows adults to give out unlimited tickets or tokens while still providing only the number of rewards that are practical and available. In the lottery system, every ticket simply increases a student's chance of winning. Finally, tickets and tokens offer great opportunities for building school-wide climate and culture. Creating competitions among grade levels or school-wide goal for positives can be a great motivator and encourage teamwork. Prominent displays of performance can also help to build a positive culture and keep students focused on positive behavior. Of course, all of this so far has focused on the positive, what we do when students are successful. But consequences are also required when students are not successful, and that has to be another part of what we talk about as a PBIS school. In general, there are three major things to keep in mind when considering consequences for misbehavior. First, correction should be a part of all responses to misbehavior. Even if the behavior is serious enough to require the most intensive consequences, correction and reteaching are necessary as part of the response. Correction always involves discussing the more appropriate behavior with the student and asking for some indication of understanding. When appropriate, this may also involve reteaching and opportunities to practice. Note that this does not mean there cannot be a more intensive consequence. Second, we have absolutely zero evidence that removing a student from the classroom or school is effective in changing behavior. Of course, there are behaviors that create safety issues that require student removal. But as a simple punishment for the student, removals are actually a better predictor of future removal than they are of behavior change. Third, because removal from the classroom and school is such a common response to misbehavior, schools must work to consider effective consequence strategies in addition to prevention. PBIS schools gather their faculty and staff to discuss the most common student misbehaviors and brainstorm effective responses. Seasoned teachers who have experience dealing with common misbehaviors often have a bag of tricks or strategies that have worked over the years. Sharing these ideas with all helps to build a school-wide set of effective strategies, which is especially helpful for novice teachers who may not have ever considered their responses to such behaviors. Take some time with your faculty and staff to really discuss the logic for positive consequences. Make sure everyone understands that positive acknowledgement is the most effective tool we have. Also, discuss how you can think more about providing effective correction for misbehavior and develop consequences that are functional for students and do not result in missed instructional time.
Monitoring the effect of PBIS is essential, as the idea is to use the most effective strategies. Data of our effect on student behavior is the key to evaluating the effects of those strategies. There is no one correct way to collect data. Some schools use commercially available systems, such as the Swiss, because of its advanced features. However, the Infinite Campus system used in Kentucky schools can be used to house and analyze data for PBIS purposes. For more information on how to use your KSIS system for PBIS, see the video tutorial at CIBRS.com. In order to be successful with monitoring, there are three keys. First, we must all agree on the definition of problem behavior. What is noncompliance? What is disrespect? And what constitutes a fight? These are questions we must answer in order to have valid data. Second, we must create a monitoring system that is simple. As a rule of thumb, nothing related to collecting data on behavior should take more than 1% of adult time. To make this the case, we'll have to create a streamlined routine. Third, we must actually use the data and report the findings to the entire school to show how it is being used for decision making. The first step is to go back to the list of misbehaviors that was generated during the prediction activity. These behaviors need to be considered alongside the behaviors that all schools are legally mandated to collect to make sure all relevant behaviors are accounted for. The next step is to build a form for collecting data. While some schools enter data directly into a computer-based system, most schools first record on a paper form and then transfer to computer. An effective paper form contains only the information needed, requires as little effort as possible to complete, and is familiar to all adults. Note in the example here that behaviors, locations, and responses require only a check mark, making it very simple to complete. In addition, this form can be used as either a report of a problem that was dealt with by the teacher or as a referral to the office, sometimes also referred to as minor or major incidents. This distinction is important. It allows the school to track both the largest problems and report to the state while also tracking less intensive behaviors that can be used to better predict smaller misbehaviors. It also allows the school to gather data on students who are accumulating minor misbehaviors. These students are at risk for larger failure, and this early identification can be crucial in developing effective interventions. Once data has been collected and entered into the computerized system, it can be pulled back out in graphic form to evaluate the effect of PBIS and identify new problem areas or students. This graph was pulled from a school's record to show progress on reducing office discipline referrals over a 2-year period. More specific graphs can show progress by behavior incident type, by location, or by time of day. At their monthly meeting, the PBIS team uses this data to answer their 3 big questions. Are we meeting our goals? Are there any new hotspots? Are there students who have had more than our criterion number of referrals, who need to be referred for further assessment? Using other features of common computer-based systems, it is simple to look at more complex issues such as referrals by race, specific incidents by location, or even such specific questions as, at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, what is the most common misbehavior and where does it occur? At the end of each monthly meeting, the PBIS team will report the findings back to the entire school at a faculty meeting. But the data should be posted in an area where all faculty and staff can take the time to see for themselves what is going on. This helps in 2 ways. First, it helps to reinforce people for data collection as they see the benefit of having this detail from their monitoring efforts. Second, this will be helpful in convincing faculty and staff of the need for revision. As data indicate that strategies are not successful, this public visual helps with the acceptance of new ideas and tweaks to existing plans. Before viewing the final module, consider the degree to which your data collection and monitoring systems are simple, accurate, and consistently used across the school. Who in your school is or can be responsible for inputting data and for graphing data for the team to use in making data-based decisions?
While PBIS has been demonstrated to be effective and has been labeled an evidence-based practice by the U.S. Department of Education, its effect is dependent upon the degree to which the school implements the key components. Clearly, even the most effective practices can be ineffective when not applied correctly. We use the term fidelity to refer to how consistently a school is implementing all of the components of PBIS. And research has shown that positive student outcomes are dependent upon the school's fidelity with PBIS. This module describes some basic methods of assessing the fidelity of PBIS implementation in your school. The most validated method of assessing PBIS fidelity is through direct observations using the School Effectiveness Tool, or the SET. The SET is administered by a trained person from outside the school and consists of document review, observations, and interviews with both faculty and students. There are 7 distinct subcategories within the SET, and research has demonstrated that 80% overall score across categories, along with an 80% in the teaching behavioral expectations portion, is predictive of improved student outcomes. This is known as the 80-80 criterion. The advantage of the SET is that it is well validated and provides a very comprehensive assessment of PBIS. The disadvantage is that it requires a trained administrator from outside the school, and it's time-consuming. The Tiered Fidelity Inventory, or TFI, is an abbreviated form of the SET that can be administered by a PBIS coach or used as a self-assessment. So the big advantage of the TFI is that it is much easier to administer. However, along with this simplicity comes a loss of validity, especially when used as a self-assessment. The ABRE School Assessment, or the ASA, consists of a structured interview with PBIS team members and the administrator. It is meant to be administered by someone outside the school. Uniquely, the ASA contains separate subsections for behavior, reading, math, and writing, but can be used solely as a PBIS assessment. Research has shown that 80% overall fidelity on the behavior section of the ASA is associated with a significant decrease in student suspensions. The advantage of the ASA is that it is simpler than the SET and can be administered by anybody who understands PBIS. The disadvantage is that it has not been as well researched and is not as comprehensive as the SET. The Benchmarks of Quality is a comprehensive checklist of key features of PBIS divided into categories. It is meant to serve as a sort of formative self-assessment wherein the PBIS team would look at it each month. identifying areas in need of the attention, and making plans that will be assessed again at the next monthly meeting. The big advantage of the BOQ is that it provides the PBIS team with a great way to do self-assessment in an ongoing manner. While there aren't strict scores, there is illumination of the areas in need of work, helping school teams to focus their goals. The disadvantage of the BOQ is that it has not been validated as a summative assessment or linked to outcomes. As you continue to look into PBIS, you're certain to find that there are commercial enterprises out there willing to sell you PBIS materials. But one of the great things about PBIS is that it has been largely developed with support from grants from the federal government and from KDE. As a result of this, the vast majority of resources are available free of charge. We encourage you to visit these websites to find additional information, materials, forms, presentations, and measures that are available to you free of charge. If you have any questions about PBIS in Kentucky, we urge you to contact the Center for Instructional and Behavioral Research in Schools at the University of Louisville through their website at CIBRS.com. As we end this final module, take a few minutes to have a simple discussion with your coworkers. Do you monitor the fidelity of your school's instruction and programming for behavior? Where do you believe your school could best focus its energy to create more consistent support systems for behavior?